Forget everything you think you know about Leonardo da Vinci. Forget the enigmatic smile of the Mona Lisa. Forget the divine harmony of the Last Supper. Because before he became the greatest artist in history, he came to Milan to get a job. And his resume was unlike any other. Imagine the year 1482. Milan is not a quiet art center. It's a bubbling cauldron of power, wealth, and the constant threat of war. It's ruled by Duke Ludovico Sforza, an ambitious, ruthless man, desperately in need of a military advantage. And then, a 30-year-old Florentine arrives at his palace with a letter in hand. This letter is one of the most shocking job descriptions in history. It's not an artist's plea for patronage. It's a military engineer's proposal, promising total battlefield dominance. In 10 points, Leonardo lists his abilities. He doesn't talk about paints and perspective. He talks about death. Point 1. He can build super light, yet strong bridges to pursue the enemy. Point 3. He can drain moats and create siege engines. Point 4. He has designed a new type of mortar that hurls stones, causing a storm, and sows panic in enemy ranks. With each point, the tension builds. He describes silent cannons, siege ladders, catapults of unprecedented power. And then, he moves on to his main projects. He writes, "I will make covered chariots, safe and unassailable, which will break into the enemy's ranks with their artillery, and no army will withstand them." This is a tank. 400 years before World War I, the man we know as the greatest artist came to apply for a job as a merchant of death, and his portfolio could have changed the course of history. And only at the very end of the letter, after 10 points dedicated to destruction, Leonardo adds a humble postscript. He says that in peacetime he can work as an architect, and also, in painting, I can do anything that is possible. This letter is the key to understanding the true Leonardo. Not a dreamer, but an engineer. Not an artist, but a weapons inventor. But was this weapon a reality? Or just a bluff by a genius desperately looking for work? Today we will open his secret files. We will examine the blueprints of his most terrifying machines, and we will answer the question, could they have actually worked? So where did Leonardo keep the blueprints for these incredible machines? The answer is everywhere and nowhere. They were scattered across thousands of pages of his personal notebooks, which today we call codices. And to understand his inventions, we must first understand these documents. Renaissance Italy was not just a place. It was an ecosystem. Think of it as the Silicon Valley of the 15th century. Competing city-states like Apple and Microsoft. Wealthy families like venture capitalists. And war was a constant driver of innovation. If you didn't innovate, you lost. In this environment, Leonardo was not just an artist. He was a one-man startup. His notebooks were his laboratory. It's a chaotic but brilliant whirlwind of thoughts. On one page, you'll find a detailed sketch of the human heart next to calculations for a hydraulic pump. On another, a sketch of a flying bird is juxtaposed with a drawing of a giant crossbow. This was a mind that saw no boundaries between art, science, and war. But there is one peculiarity that has puzzled researchers for decades. All these thousands of pages are written backward, in mirror image. To read them, you need to hold them up to a mirror. Why? The first thought is secrecy. He was creating weapons and wanted to protect his ideas from spies, and that's partly true. But the real reason is much simpler and more human. Leonardo was left-handed. In an era when people wrote with quill pens and ink, for a left-handed person, writing from left to right meant smudging everything they wrote. Mirror writing from right to left was simply more convenient for him. And this is where, at about the 6.5-minute mark, we understand the true purpose of his codices. It wasn't just a secret diary. It was his personal GitHub, his private repository of knowledge. He wrote in a language that was intuitively understood only by him, not so much to conceal but to systematize. He was documenting his operating system for understanding the world. He called it saper vedere, to know how to see. For him, drawing was not art, but a tool for knowledge. He couldn't understand something until he drew it. He dissected the world on paper to see how it worked. His notebooks are the source code of the universe as he saw it. And today, using modern technology, we can do what was impossible for centuries. We can unlock these encrypted files and compile his first great military project, a machine that was supposed to be an invincible turtle on the battlefield. Imagine a 15th century battlefield, armies of knights in shining armor, the roar of primitive cannons, and suddenly, from behind a hill, this appears, a clumsy, alien creature of wood and metal. It looks like a giant turtle or a flying saucer descended from the heavens. For the soldiers of that time, it would have been the sight of the devil himself. This is Leonardo's armored fighting vehicle, his tank. And it's not just a box on wheels. Every detail in its design screams of genius, centuries ahead of its time. Let's break it down, as engineers break down a prototype. First, there's the armor. Leonardo understood that flat walls were vulnerable to cannonballs. His solution? A conical shape, like a turtle's shell. This meant that enemy projectiles would strike the armor at an angle and ricochet, losing their destructive power. This is the same principle of sloped armor used in modern tanks like the M1 Abrams. Leonardo discovered it in 1487. Second, firepower. The tank was armed with light cannons positioned around its perimeter. This gave it 360-degree firing capability, while conventional artillery could only fire in one direction. This machine was a walking fortress, spreading death all around it. It was an absolute game-changer. Third, control. A lookout tower was located on top of the tank. From there, the commander could coordinate the crew's actions and designate targets, protected from enemy fire. He even designed a ventilation system to prevent gunpowder smoke from suffocating the soldiers inside. But the most important question is, how did this behemoth move? Leonardo didn't have an internal combustion engine. His engine was people. Inside, 8 men were supposed to turn giant cranks connected to a complex system of gears and shafts that drove the 4 wheels. Let's digitally assemble this transmission, exactly according to his blueprints. Here's the frame, here are the wheels, and here's the drive system. The cranks turn the central shaft. The shaft transfers force to the gears. The gears turn the wheel axles. Everything looks perfect. Theoretically, it should work. But here, at about the 14-minute mark of our investigation, we find something that defies logic. When modern engineers recreated this system, they discovered a fatal, simply glaring flaw. The gears for the front wheels and the gears for the rear wheels were designed to rotate in opposite directions. Think about it. It's like simultaneously pressing the gas pedal and the brake. The machine would simply lock itself up. It wouldn't move an inch. It was designed not to work. And here arises the main question. Could Leonardo da Vinci, the greatest engineering mind of his era, a genius who could calculate the most complex hydraulic systems, make such a childish mistake? A mistake that any apprentice would notice? Or was it deliberate? Was this an act of sabotage by the inventor himself? Perhaps Leonardo, a pacifist at heart, who hated war and called it bestial madness, created his deadliest weapon and built a secret kill switch into it so that no one could ever use it? We will never know for sure. Flight. For Leonardo, it was an absolute obsession. His notebooks are filled with anatomical sketches of bird wings, analyses of air currents, and dozens of designs for flying machines. Most of them were ornithopters, machines that flapped their wings like birds. But among them, there is one drawing that seems like an alien from the future. It doesn't resemble a bird or a bat. It's an elegant, almost abstract design. A platform on which 4 people stand. And above them, a giant screw, like a corkscrew or an Archimedes screw. Its diameter is about 15 feet, almost 5 meters. According to Leonardo's plan, it was to be made of reed, linen, and wire. This is the aerial screw, and in essence, it's the world's first helicopter design. The idea itself was absolute genius. Leonardo moved away from copying nature. He didn't try to imitate wing flapping. He applied pure physics. He understood that air is not a void. It's a fluid medium, just like water. And if an Archimedes screw can screw into water and lift it up, then why couldn't a giant screw into the air and lift a machine upwards? This is the fundamental principle of aerodynamics that underlies all modern helicopters. The rotor blades create lift by pushing against the air. Leonardo understood this 300 years before the first aerial model was built, and 450 years before the first helicopter flight. His design was well thought out. He even anticipated that to counteract the rotation of the main rotor, the entire platform would have to rotate in the opposite direction. But this could be solved with a second rotor. He was on the verge of a revolution. But could it work? Let's beta test it again. 4 people stand on the platform. They push levers with all their might, which, through a system of gears, rotate the central shaft with the screw. The screw starts spinning faster and faster, and nothing happens. And here, at about the 22nd minute, we encounter the main tragedy of all geniuses ahead of their time. The problem wasn't the idea. The problem was the power source. Leonardo designed the perfect electric car 500 years before the invention of the lithium-ion battery. The problem is the power-to-weight ratio. 4 people, working at their maximum capacity, can generate about 2 horsepower. Calculations show that lifting such a heavy structure into the air would require at least 20 times more power. Human muscles are simply not an efficient enough engine. Furthermore, the machine itself would have been too heavy. A wooden frame, linen fabric, it wasn't enough. For aerodynamics to work, he needed lightweight, composite materials and a compact, powerful, internal combustion engine or turbine. He needed the 20th century. Leonardo's aerial screw never took off. It was a brilliant concept, imprisoned by the technology of its time. He saw the future, but couldn't build it from wood and linen. It was a dream, destined to remain on paper. In Leonardo's era, cannons had already changed the rules of war, but they had one huge fatal flaw: reloading. After each shot, the hot barrel had to be cleaned, powder poured in, a cannonball inserted, and the fuse lit. It was a slow, messy, and dangerous process. While the artillerymen fiddled with one cannon, enemy cavalry could gallop across the field and cut them to pieces. Rate of fire was key to victory, and Leonardo found a solution. Simple, elegant, and absolutely deadly. If you can't quickly reload one barrel, use many barrels. In his drawings, we see a monster he called the 33-barreled organ. The name comes from its resemblance to a musical instrument, but the music it was meant to play was the music of death. The design was ingenious in its simplicity. He took 11 muskets and mounted them in a row on a single board. Then he made 3 such boards and joined them into a triangular prism that could rotate. This entire structure was mounted on a light, 2-wheeled carriage that could be quickly moved across the battlefield. The principle of operation was similar to a revolver. Imagine this. The first row of 11 barrels fires a volley. While the smoke clears, the artillerymen don't waste time reloading. They simply rotate the drum. The second row of 11 barrels is ready for action. Volley. They rotate the drum again. The third row. Volley. In the time it took a conventional cannon to fire one shot, Leonardo's organ could fire 33 bullets, creating a wall of lead capable of wiping out an entire line of infantry. And while it was firing the second and third rows, the first, already cooled row could be safely reloaded. It was a conveyor belt of death, the great-grandfather of the Gatling gun. And here, at about the 30-minute mark, we come to the main conclusion about this machine. Unlike the tank, with its locked wheels, and the helicopter, with its weak engine, there is not a single technologically impossible element in this design. It could have been built, and it could have worked. Moreover, it would have been damn effective. Using 15th century materials and technology, a weapon could have been created that would give any army an undeniable advantage. So why don't we see these organs on the battlefields of the Italian wars? Why didn't any duke order hundreds of them? Perhaps the answer lies in economics. Creating 33 quality barrels for one machine was incredibly expensive. Or perhaps the reason was different. Perhaps this weapon was too terrifying, too inhuman even for the brutal world of the Renaissance. It turned war from a duel of honor into an industrial slaughter. So we have a tank with a defect, a helicopter without an engine, and an absolutely functional but never built machine gun. What's going on here? The picture doesn't add up. Maybe we've been asking the wrong question all this time. Maybe the question isn't, could they have worked? But, why did he design them at all? We are used to thinking of blueprints as instructions, as plans that are meant to be realized in metal and wood. But what if, for Leonardo, they were something entirely different? What if we are trying to judge a genius by rules he didn't acknowledge? Let's look at the modern world. Every year at auto shows in Geneva or Detroit, manufacturers display concept cars. These are futuristic, incredible machines with designs that seem impossible. They might have gull-wing doors, wheels without axles, or interiors made of recycled moss. No one expects these cars to go into mass production tomorrow. Their purpose is different. They are created to explore the boundaries of what's possible, to test new ideas, to show the direction in which design and technology will move. Now go back 500 years. Leonardo's notebooks are the first conceptual auto show in history. His tank, his helicopter, his robot knight are not products ready for assembly. They are the concept cars of the Renaissance. Leonardo wasn't just an engineer fulfilling an order. He was the world's first head of research and development, R&D. His true goal wasn't to build a specific tank. His goal was to understand the very principles of armored warfare. When he drew sloped armor, he was researching ballistics. When he designed a drive system, he was studying mechanics and power transmission. When he placed cannons, he was thinking about tactics and zones of engagement. The blueprint was not the final product for him. It was a tool of investigation, a thought experiment recorded on paper. This explains everything. It explains the mistake in the tank. Perhaps he simply didn't finish that part because he was more interested in the shape of the hull. Or more likely, he was exploring different drive options, and that particular sketch was just one of the unsuccessful iterations. It explains the helicopter. He wasn't trying to build it tomorrow. He was trying to understand if vertical takeoff was even possible in principle. He was asking what if, rather than how to make. For Leonardo, the process was more important than the result. His codices are not a catalog of finished inventions. They are the laboratory journal of the greatest experimenter in history. He dissected the world to see how it worked, and then reassembled it on paper to see how it could work. He was the first person to systematically use drawing as a tool for scientific inquiry. He didn't read ancient texts to learn how the world worked. He looked at it with his own eyes. Saper vedere, to know how to see. But does this mean he was merely a theorist? A dreamer whose ideas were destined to remain on paper? Or could he still create real, working things that change the world here and now? It's easy, after hearing about flying machines and non-working tanks, to dismiss Leonardo as a pure theoretician, a dreamer whose head was literally in the clouds. But that would be a profound mistake, because when Leonardo needed to come down to earth, his genius became frighteningly practical. Remember his resume for the Duke of Milan? Point 1. I can build super light and strong bridges that can be moved very easily. This was not empty boasting. He did indeed design, and, most likely, built several versions of his collapsible swing bridge. It was a brilliantly simple design on a single hinge that a small squad of soldiers could quickly deploy over a river or moat, and then, just as quickly, fold up. This was practical, working technology that gave an army speed and maneuverability. But his practicality wasn't limited to war. The Duke of Milan tasked him with modernizing the Lombardy canal system. Leonardo didn't just draw beautiful landscapes. He delved into hydrodynamics. He designed and improved a system of double-gated locks, essentially a boat elevator, that allowed vessels to overcome differences in elevation. He didn't just see a river. He saw a system that needed to be managed. His work helped make Milan richer and more powerful. But the most astonishing example of his practical genius lay dormant for 500 years. In 1502, Leonardo left Italy and offered his services to the most powerful man in the world, Sultan Bayezid II of the Ottoman Empire. He made him the boldest proposal of his career. He offered to build a bridge across the Golden Horn Bay in Istanbul. This was not just a bridge, it was engineering audacity. He designed a single-span arch bridge, 720 feet, or 240 meters, long, so high that a ship with full sails could pass under it. At that time, it would have been the longest bridge in the world. The Sultan's engineers studied the blueprints and rendered their verdict, "It's impossible." They thought he was crazy. The project was rejected, and Leonardo's drawings were filed away, where they remained for almost 5 centuries. Now let's fast forward to 2001. In Norway, near the town of Os, a group of engineers decided to conduct an experiment. They found Leonardo's drawings, and they built a pedestrian bridge using his design, his calculations, his principles of load distribution, without a single nail or bolt, just as the genius intended. And what happened? It worked. Perfectly. 500 years later, technology confirmed that Leonardo was right. His most ambitious project was not a fantasy. It was a reality that simply waited for the world to catch up. So we have two Leonardos before us. The dreamer, sketching flying machines, and the pragmatist, building canals for trade. Which one is the real one? The answer is both. And to understand his true legacy, we must realize that his greatest invention was never made of wood or metal. His greatest invention was a process. He didn't invent the tank. He invented a way of thinking about tanks. He essentially created the first version of what we today call the scientific method. In an era when knowledge meant quoting the ancient Greeks, Leonardo trusted only one source, his own eyes. His motto was saper vedere, to know how to see. He spent hours observing the flow of water to understand hydrodynamics. He dissected corpses, risking accusations of heresy, to understand how the human body, this divine machine, worked. He studied the flight of birds to steal the secret of aerodynamics from nature. Then he formulated a hypothesis. But instead of writing a scientific treatise, he drew. For him, drawing was not art. It was an experiment, a way to ask the universe a question with ink and paper. What if the gears are connected like this? What if the wing has this curve? His notebooks are not just a collection of ideas. They are a laboratory journal. He built and tested his machines in the safest and cheapest place, his imagination. He made mistakes on paper, so he wouldn't make them in reality. This is iteration. This is prototyping. This is the foundation of all modern engineering. And here, at about the 52nd minute, we see his absolute genius. He was the first to systematically combine art and engineering. He understood what Steve Jobs would understand 500 years later, that form and function are one and the same. He believed that the most efficient design is always the most beautiful. A bird's wing is beautiful because it is perfectly adapted for flight. The human hand is elegant because it is capable of an infinite number of complex movements. This obsession with the unity of beauty and functionality, a direct line stretches from Leonardo's workshop to Apple's design labs in Cupertino. He didn't leave us working machines. He left us something far more valuable. He left us a method. Instructions on how to look at the world, take it apart, and put it back together, making it better. His notebooks are not just a gallery of ideas. They are an invitation. At the end of his life, Leonardo lived in France under the patronage of King Francis I. He no longer designed weapons or built canals. He sat in his study, surrounded by thousands of pages of his notebooks, and until his last days tried to systematize his knowledge. He drew vortices, floods, and the end of the world. He tried to understand the most fundamental forces of nature. He died, leaving behind only a few paintings and a mountain of failed projects. His tank did not change the course of wars. His helicopter did not take flight. His contemporaries remembered him as a great artist, but not as a great engineer. It seemed his greatest ambitions had failed. But we, looking at him from the future, understand that they did not fail. They were simply too grand for his time. He was not designing for the 15th century. He was designing for us. His notebooks are not a collection of failures. They are a time capsule, a message sent to the future. He left his projects unfinished, not because he couldn't complete them. He left them to us. He showed the way, drew a map of uncharted territories, and said, "Go further." He didn't give us a working tank, but he gave us the idea of mobile armor, which was realized 400 years later. He didn't give us a helicopter, but he gave us the principle of vertical takeoff, which Igor Sikorsky brought to life. He didn't give us a machine gun, but he gave us the concept of rapid fire, which Richard Gatling perfected. His legacy is not what he built. It's how he thought. He taught us to look at the world through the eyes of both an artist and an engineer. He taught us that curiosity is the most powerful engine of progress, and that the greatest breakthroughs happen at the intersection of disciplines. The greatest machine Leonardo da Vinci designed was not made of wood, metal, or fabric. His greatest machine is a model of the human mind, a mind that knows no bounds, a mind that is eternally hungry for knowledge, a mind that strives not just to exist in the universe, but to understand it. And this project, the most ambitious of all, he intentionally left unfinished, because it is endless, and he bequeathed it to us so that we may continue it.